I know that a lot of people think that it's scary, but it's not. It's not scary. It's not what, in general, it's not what the media makes it to be, right? It's not like everybody's hacking and wearing they're wearing hoodies and they're like, typing in the basement in the dark and typing away with green fonts on the screen. No, that's not it, right? I'm a cybersecurity professional. I'm a regular girl. So if we don't look what the media makes us to look like at all.
Exactly. Exactly.
Welcome to Podcast Wise Perspectives, Next Generation. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're a parent, you've probably felt that mix of awe and anxiety watching your kids navigate technology. You know the world is changing, but how do you prepare them for careers in AI or cyber when the landscape shifts every day? I'm back with Dr. Joan Jackson, and today we're talking about the youngsters. We discuss why curiosity is the ultimate tech skill, how to handle the frustration of learning, and why your kitchen might be the best classroom for logic and systems thinking. Dr. Jackson is an educational change management consultant and risk strategist with over 3 decades of leadership experience across K-12 and higher education. She holds a PhD in educational leadership and is a certified PROSI change management practitioner. From serving as an assistant dean to spearheading high-impact STEM programs for underserved communities, she has spent her career building sustainable systems and aligning complex goals with equitable outcomes. All right, let's get started. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Joan, welcome back.
Glad to be back.
All right. Thanks for coming back. Today we're going to talk about the youngsters.
Hey.
All right. For parents of younger students, what foundational, non-technical skills are the best predictors of success in their future tech career?
Like mathematics, science, and a love of learning. Creativity. The one thing I've learned about tech is that students have to have that curiosity. And if they're not exposed to things to make them curious, that's the key to tech. In my opinion, that's the key to tech is having that curiosity. You got to have the math skills, you got to have the science skills, and not necessarily, you're doing geometry and your trig and cal, but to the point that you're doing simple math, you understand, vectors, you know how things go and those kinds of things. But starting out with small things like science fair projects are good experiments. Cooking is a good experience because there's for cooking, cooking is chemistry. And getting your kids ready for those kinds of curiosity, creativity, learning is important. So I think, with art is a really good foundation. Being able to design and create things, critical thinking, knitting. I never will forget, I tell people all the time, knitting is a great predictor of learning. Because you have shapes and you have a pattern, you have a formation, and being able to abstractly think about how you're going to manipulate that yarn into something that is coming out with a product is key. So I'm not a tech person. I'm not one of those parents, or I was never one of those parents that sat my kid in front of a computer. We read a lot. We did a lot of cooking. We did a lot of coloring. We did a lot of drawing. And I think that those kinds of simplistic skills can impact a tech career. I mean, you've got to be able to think logically and to have those kinds of activities that your child can do that develop that logical, critical thinking is important in creating that tech foundation.
Okay. So I think I read it somewhere where they no longer say it's STEM, but more like STEAM. So they added the A for art. So that's cool.
And I do believe that because I think that art, music stimulates the brain. So if we don't understand that, and the artistic, that visual piece stimulates brain activity. So until we can figure out how to put the arts there, far more than the music and the art, but that also creates that brain stimulation, and having the logical pieces put together is important part of the STEM world in the STEAM concept.
Mm-hmm. Now, how can a parent help a child develop the perseverance and resilience necessary to overcome difficult technical challenges like coding or even advanced math?
I think that parents need to go back to or begin to learn how to deal with child's frustration, because learning is a frustrating aspect. If it's new, oh, I'm never going to get it. It's
Right.
like, no, we're going to sit down and try it. Having that conversation with, okay, we know it's hard. We know this is new. Tell me why. And talking it out and having them process, you did this step. Why do you think this step didn't work? And then have them process it, because that process again develops that critical thinking piece. If they can talk it out, they can rationally reason. It goes back to that emotional intelligence that we talked about before, that having that ability to self stimulate, self regulate, and to process an information, and being able to, as parents, sit down with their child and have that conversation helps them to develop that perseverance and that resilience. It's not going to happen the first time. And
Mhm.
saying, okay, let's try it again. Okay, it didn't happen, time 10, that we're going to try time 11, right?
Right,
So
right.
you're going to go back through and keep going until, voila, it functions. And so I think having those persevering moments and being able to demonstrate that not only as an adult but also as a parent goes a long way for the child to learn how to be able to stay on task and to come back with the curiosity and that still willpower to say, hey, I want to try it,
Mhm.
is important.
Yeah, and also I would say that is also a parent's patience, right?
Mm, yes.
Patience and their own perseverance
Hmm.
also to want to help the kid to
Yes.
okay, well, let's try this again. Okay, let's try this again. As a parent, yes, it is frustrating for yourself. You're like, okay, well, you know the answer, right? Like I know how to get to this. I did this before. I know how to solve this problem. But you're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna tell you the answer, but
Yeah.
you're like, try again, buddy. You can do this. You know, because it happened to me. I'm like, I know the answer, but I'm not gonna tell you the answer, buddy, because you gotta learn yourself. I can't tell you. You know.
I think one of the most rewarding experiences I had as a parent is my daughter wanted to do science fair. And I love science, but she was doing something I really didn't really know much about. But I think for me though, and for us, it was a both we had a learning experience together.
Yeah,
And
those.
so being able to bounce the ideas off of each other. Why do you think this didn't work? Well, I don't know. And it's like, Mom, why don't you know? It's like I don't know everything. And being able to say that,
Mhm.
and because and then that's that, as you say, you express that vulnerability to your child. It's like, hey, I don't, if you can say to your child, I don't know, but we'll get through it together. I think that gives them the chance to say, hey, my parents don't know everything, even though they think we do.
Mhm.
I think having that vulnerability allows them to see that, we're both going to learn this together. We're both going to get through it together. And we're just going to plod along until we find an answer. And that too demonstrates that perseverance and resiliency. And as you said, being able to say, I know the answer, in your head that you know the answer, but you're trying to get your child to get to that response. Being able to say, well, let's talk about it. Let's walk through the answers. Let's demonstrate, and you show them and they show you. I also find too that, you have your child demonstrate, okay, show me what you know up to this point.
Mhm.
And being able to allow them to show you what they know is key to them being the master of
Mhm.
that particular strategy, because at that point they're in control of the learning
Mhm.
and they own that learning up to what they know. And then when they get to that point where they don't know, then that's where you as the parent can come in as the guide on the side. You're not going to give the answer, but you are going to guide them through, okay, so let's take it to the next step. What do you think should happen next? And then allow them to take the ownership of mastering that learning.
Yeah. So, what is the most common misconception parents have about guiding their children towards a career in AI or cybersecurity?
I think with the things that I have been experiencing now, they just think that because their kids are on the phone, they know how to do things. They're in school, they should know how to do these things. They don't. It's a skill that really requires time. And in schools, we don't have the time to teach the strategies unless they're in a dedicated course. For example, I'll tell you about what I found to be true. I used to teach at a middle school. And as much as we've been playing with Google Slides and PowerPoints for all these many years, it was astonishing that there were students who didn't know how to put together Google Slides.
Mhm.
And having to teach that skill was really surprising. But I think parents assume that because their kids are at school, they're doing all these projects, that they know how to do that. There are some, they have to learn the technology.
Mhm.
And I also found that, luckily my school had 2 computer labs where we actually were able to use Scratch and, Code HS and to infuse the technology. So it has to be gradually done. But I think the myth is that, oh, they're in school, they're learning, they're on their computers. Yeah, they are. Probably not so much now, but I think that, yeah, they are, but they know what they know. But when it comes down to the technical skills that we talked about before, how to use the AI, how to use the IT, how to use the simple, how to set up spreadsheets and all those other things that come with the entry level technology that we talk about. The instruction is not done in the classroom unless
Mhm.
it's a dedicated course like what you would get in a high school. Definitely not at the lower levels. So being able to translate those skills into the workforce or to translate it to the classroom world is not something that we normally do in a classroom environment. I would assume that that's something that would be done, especially like, I was going back to my daughter's science fair project. We had to learn how to create tables doing science fair. So we were both learning how to do Google Sheets together.
Mhm.
So those are things that you have to learn how to infuse with home learning. And I would assume that's, like most parents are doing now. But to think that we do those kinds of things in the classroom is not something that we normally do.
Yeah, because I think that's more like it's an add-on, right? Like they don't really tell you how to do it. I think with my son, when he's doing Google Slides, he's like on it. He's like, he knows how to do it. I didn't teach him that, but he somehow figured it out by himself how to use Google Slides. I was like, okay, I don't have to teach you, but sometimes he's like, oh, I want to do this. Can I do that? I'm like, let me see. Yeah, you can. Like those are the things that we sometimes sit together and be like, okay, well, you can do this. And then Google Sheets, because I've had a lot of experience in Excel, so I can translate that a little bit to Google Sheets. I showed him some tips and tricks, and he's like, oh my God, like just like I solved world hunger for him. He's like, "Oh my god, this is great," I'm like, "Yeah," But that's the thing is that some of the skills, especially in the, productive suites that the kids are currently using, it's not something that, that whenever they started using computers, I would say, what, 3rd or 4th grade, he started using computer, and I do not remember the teacher saying, "Oh, yeah, this is a class to how to use Google Slides or how to use
Mhm.
Excel or Word." Um, you know, and right now, you would think that some kids would know how to type better than
No,
most adults. They would be like they're like pecking, right? But not my boy. He's he's typing super fast, and they didn't get a typing class, right? So that's an initiative that he had. It's like, you know what? On my time off after school, between dinner and coming back home, I'm gonna practice how to type. That's something like he's like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm like,
mm,
okay.
yeah, my daughter had to.
Competition, he would say, "Mommy, how many words per minute can you type?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "I can type 75." I'm like, "Okay, good for you, buddy."
you know, and my daughter is one of those people. She did not learn how to type the correct way. But
Mhm.
she can, type, her version of typing, unlike those of us who had keyboarding or typing in high school many, many moons ago, she can out type me with correctness with just maybe four fingers. And, it's astonishing. But I think, when we talk about the technology and using the strategies and what could be, as you said, we sit down with our kids and teach them. And I think that's something that parents just don't seem to have that kind of patience anymore. Or we're so used to putting the tablet in front of our kids and our kids are pecking with their fingers. But the actual strategy of using a tool or a software that could strengthen those skills, I find some parents aren't doing that to
Mhm.
make that a successful strategy for their child later on in life.
Yeah. Now, if a student shows an interest in AI, how can a parent guide them to projects that emphasize ethical and responsible use of technology?
Well, the one thing I have come to really learn to appreciate now is there are so many different kinds of strategies and software tools that are out there that are kid friendly, that are ethical, that are something that can easily be used to strengthen that strategy. So, for example, Scratch is something that's, very much the kids in my county have probably all gone through some type of Scratch training to use for simple coding and animation tools. We use different kinds of programs for news for news programs or news broadcasting or videotaping. There are, softwares that we use, even down to the partnerships that we developed. I work really closely with a company called Because I Can. And they work not only with the students, they work with the parents too. They train the parents. For example, we had, when we went to COVID, parents weren't aware of how to use Google Classroom or how to access Canva. They actually came in and trained the parents and they trained the students what they were going to do when they got back to school after COVID and when we changed over from School Max to the new system. So having that training goes a long way and being able to have those skills and use those technology pieces. And I hate to say it, there are some gaming programs that do a great job of this. I'm not really versed, but I do know that, as much as I hate to date myself, but even when we talked about those old fashioned Tetra games, which are basically a form of gaming,
Mhm.
and the PS3s and all of those that the kids use, those gaming tools that talk about the brain and programming, um, and manipulating strategies and tools are really good at developing critical thinking skills, developing hand-eye coordination, looking at systems and logic models. Any of those strategies can be definitely used to move into the world of technology.
Yeah, and pattern recognition is another one. So currently, there's games where it's like you can go get a job, right? You can be a server,
Hmm.
you could be a pilot, you can have pilot
Hmm.
simulations, and you could work at the airport. You can learn, uh,
Exactly.
you can learn all the airport names and what they do and all the airlines. You could work at a restaurant where you're a server, a cook,
Oh
somebody on
yeah.
the line, all kinds of games. I was like,
Yeah.
so my son comes back home and he's like, "Hey, mommy, I put in a resume and I got the job." I'm like, "You have a job? Where's your check? Where do I have to drive you?" Right? He's like, "No, no, no. It's upstairs. It's in my room. It's on the game." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like,
But
remember?
but you talk about those pattern recognitions. That is, even with we talked about before with the IT piece and having to have a logic to how to even prompt. There is a logic that goes behind it. And like my daughter likes to play the one with the restaurant where you have to choose the food and make the food and figure out how to solve the problem with the angry people. I mean, that's teaching them, how to make decisions, how to use those soft skills to please the customer, right? And
Mhm,
how do you develop those? And even though for us it might be simple time killing activity, but still that is developing not only their AI use, how to do decision making, but they're also learning about, hey, if I do A, B, and C, this happens. And if I sell out of 5 hot dogs. I got to make 5 hot dogs more. Or so it is teaching them some type of decision-making skills and strategies that also understand how the AI works or the IT works, so that they can manipulate the systems to be effective and efficient.
Yeah. And also the problem solving
Problem
skills,
solving, exactly.
troubleshooting, all of the skills that you need in IT and cybersecurity is troubleshooting, problem solving, pattern recognition. Because if you're looking in as, let's say, a SOC analyst, and you're trying to figure out, what happened on a network, you gotta look for the patterns and recognize them. And then this one doesn't match the previous patterns. So this is where it went wrong, right?
Mhm.
So then you troubleshoot some then you troubleshoot and then you problem solve, and the cycle.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
So beyond the classroom learning, what low cost or even free activity or resources should parents prioritize to spark genuine interest in IT or cybersecurity or even AI?
In my work or my experience, I've thought about a couple of things. I would suggest low cost tech sites. Again, Code HS, they start as early as kindergarten all the way up to college level programming, so that they could get a taste of that. Scratch, there's a free version of Scratch that you could do at home. Again, teaches simple coding, simple animation, simple programming kind of things. Any type of summer activity, summer camps that can be done to open up that creativity piece. Thinking about the arts, again, reading. Reading is a pattern. They understand the pattern of words, they understand the patterns of language, so that when they learn that new language, be it, again, going to date myself, when they learn COBOL, Pascal, whatever else they might learn as a coding language, they understand the patterns of how that tech language works. Looking at structures, mathematics, any type of thing that has to do with using hand-eye coordination, brain development, brain stimulation, music, anything that develops that idea of patterns, of systems, of creativity can be done to enhance the learning of AI and technology. I would say even flying a kite, flying a plane, simulation, going to Dave and Buster's, you know, is something that can enhance their learning of technology and AI. The more they're into that creative realm that talks about the arts and sciences and getting into mathematics, as much as people don't really want to talk about it, the probability of playing cards is important. Not that I'm promoting gambling here, but there is a science and a pattern of playing roulette, or science and pattern of playing poker. If you play Uno is a scientific process pattern. Once you figure out the patterns, you're developing that brain simulation of how patterns work. So those are the kinds of things I would suggest.
Okay. What about Legos, building blocks?
Yes. Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. Those are building those logs. People don't play those anymore. I'm dating myself, but the logs and the Legos and anything that makes learning fun, but being able to practice those skills is important.
So now, how can parents use the concept of digital citizenship and their child's own online usage to teach core cybersecurity principles?
Just the basic practice of passwords, making sure that you've got a password that you change periodically, and having that as a practice in your home is important. Understanding that cybersecurity is, cyber safety is important. You're not sharing your passwords. You're not, going to sites that are not age appropriate, making sure that the sites that they use are, encrypted, and what that means and what that looks like. There's safety on the computer, going into chat rooms and all of those kinds of things, and making sure that those chats are monitored, even down to, as much as we talk about it now. And I think I read the other day that Twitter has now got teen accounts to protect from cyber predators and from pedophiles and all of those things. I'm a big proponent. I the UK has a law about putting children on the internet and their faces and their images on internet. And I really think that that's something that as parents we need to be protective of our children, and that might be something that as parents can be more, monitoring of what you're posting, not only as a child but also as an adult, what you're posting about your child on the screen. And because that's something you can't get back. Once it's out there, it's there forever.
Yeah.
And so being able to be monitoring what kinds of things that your child is posting and how it's posted and where it's posted is important. And understanding, we're not going to be bashing people, setting, reporting a fire or threatening people on the internet is a crime. And making sure that your child is responsible for the kinds of things he or she is saying and posting on the internet can be and could be used against them if something serious happens to somebody. And I think we've had a lot of that going on in the last couple of years, where you have seen people using the internet to do bomb threats and all of that, and understanding that is an ethical issue that they need to be aware of. It might be a little simple prank to them, but it is something that is a very serious crime. And making sure that our children are aware of that this thing that we call a tool can be a bad thing and can be used wrong, and understanding what that means, that they are, it is a responsible tool. It's almost like driving a car,
Mhm.
for them to understand.
Yeah. And I think also, I don't want to say limit the kids to the internet, right? So more so make them understand what they're posting, right? That will stay forever. You can say that, I don't remember the app, but it was like, oh, this app, if you post an image, it will delete itself within a few seconds or something like that, right? But even that person that has access to that image or that video can screenshot it. So it's available afterwards, because even if it's no longer on the server, it is now on that person's phone forever. Because if that person's backs up their photos in the Google Drive, Google Photos, or iPhone, I don't know what the iPhone backup is, iTunes. No, something right?
Hmm.
uh, that it will stay on the internet forever. It may not be
Hmm.
accessible to everybody, but it's still accessible, right?
Exactly.
So knowing and teaching the kids that, and also practice what you preach,
Yes.
right? So if you preach that, you should not put these things online, be more careful that, don't be bullies online and don't do threats and whatnot. You should also do that, right? Don't
Exactly.
don't go online and start bullying somebody else, or saying mean things in the comments, or posting videos that you should not, you wouldn't be proud to present to your grandma, right? Like, that's something that I've learned, that personally, I don't post anything that I would not be proud of to send to my grandma if
Mhm.
grandmas were alive, right? So, or even to my mom, right? If I'm not proud to say, "Hey, mom, look at my picture," I would not post that online.
I think that's the culture now. It's like these new videos that you see with people, having fights, or they're having these big whatevers going on. The confrontations and the just the vulgarness of them. I think that's become a fad, and I don't think that our children. Oh, it's one thing that we as adults are old enough to understand, but our children aren't old enough to process and understand that that's, some of it is AI, some of it is fake. And if we as adults aren't careful about what we post, how can we expect our children to be careful? And so I agree with you that, as adults, we need to be mindful of what we're posting and what we're saying, because our children are watching.
Mhm. And also, like, skits, right? There's
Yes.
there's a lot of skits out there that, kids might not understand that they're skits. They're going to think that it's real, right? If they see fights and, you know, couples fighting about something random and, having quote unquote crash outs is what they call it now. They might not understand that it's fake, right? So it's something that it's unfortunate that it's happening, like that there's skits that are like that are more on a negative side for kids to watch. It's unfortunate. I would say.
And then the other part of that is the emotional trauma. You don't know, we have, just like we saw about the young man who was the football player, people are going through emotional trauma. As adults, we're kind of old enough to understand and how to process, but we don't know what our children can process, and we don't know the effects of that, what that's going to take on their toll on their mental health, because they're fragile. And so some of those videos and some of those images and some of those posts can be very triggering to young people, especially if they're already in a negative state, because their peers are saying it publicly to them as opposed to what they're seeing on the videos, right? So I think that, given the way that those videos are made, that they have no context. In some cases, there are no context, but just the images alone can be very detrimental to the mental health of young people.
Yeah, totally agree. It's unfortunate.
It is.
We can do better, people.
Yes, we can.
All right,
If
let's
we
go.
love our children. Yes.
Yeah, let's go a little bit on a brighter side.
Okay.
What are the subtle signs that a young student might have a natural inclination or aptitude for a career path in cybersecurity or AI or IT?
Well, I would have said my daughter would have been one of those people. She'd love to take a computer apart. So I think that, if they have the adaptability to try and look at circuitry, look at building, the mental dexterity that it takes, if they are interested in building video games. Young people are doing video games at an early age. If they have the dexterity and the manual ability to do, if math comes easy to them, I think that's also a sign.
Okay.
If they are very savvy, we talk about the tech piece, but if they're interested in graphic arts, if they're interested in how pieces fit together, I think that is something that needs to be honed and cultivated.
Okay.
Especially with patterns. If they're like architecture, I wanted to be an architect when I was younger. I think had I really had an environment where I was nurtured, that's something now that architecture can be done graphically through an AI tool. And having that ability to design and to construct and to visually see pieces and structures is something, if you can see that early, jump on it early, cultivate it, nurture it, find a place that can hone those skills. Like I said earlier, some of your community colleges have weekend colleges for students or summer colleges. If your child can really has the skills or the wherewithal to culture that inclination, do whatever you can to get that skill developed so that he or she can move into that field.
Yeah, that's what we did. We went to one of the colleges here and we looked at their summer programs to see if they had summer schools,
Mm-hmm.
summer camps, and we were able to find a few where they did drones coding,
Mm,
and then they did also like Minecraft coding,
yes.
learn how to code in Minecraft. Yeah, that was Minecraft because he likes Minecraft. So I was like, oh, that would be good. Like you can put
Mm-hmm.
both things together, and he loved it. He
Mm-hmm.
loved the drones one, and now he's like, oh, it looks like we're driving down the street that I went to summer camp for. I'm like, yes, this is where we're going. We're going towards on that street, but we're not going there. But yes, that's the street that we're on. So now, as a practitioner in the field, what do you see as gaps in instructions and real life application in the tech industry?
Well, one of the gaps is very clear, is that very few uh, of if you're not already a tech instructor, it's not happening in the classroom. I think it's because some of us older dinosaurs
You're not a
are.
dinosaur. What are you talking
Oh, well, thank you. But I think that some of us, some people, I can't say me because I don't think that way, but I think that people are afraid of how to infuse the technology into the classroom.
This is strange.
We don't know enough. It's strange. It's new. It's the egg that we don't know really how to help it crack itself to work. So having the lack of teachers who are really embracing it and using it is also something that is impacting the use of for it for the students. I also think that given what we have, our systems are not ready for what is required. Most schools don't operate on enough of an infrastructure to support the bandwidth that it takes for AI, technology, computing, those kinds of things. I can only speak to my school. I mean, on a good windy day, we wouldn't have internet. So, just like my house. So, when you've got 800 kids to 1,200 kids on a computer at any given time, that's a lot of bandwidth being occupied by a lot of people. And so the infrastructures in some locations aren't able to handle that many people on the system at a time. And given the complexity of what it takes to use a particular software or a group of software packages at a time really can impact the use of those tools and development of those tools. I also think some of the gaps are that, what we talked about earlier, it's changing so much. The landscape changes from day to day as to how a particular program works, what the program can access, to the types of programs that are out there. And what you use today may be obsolete tomorrow because there's something new on the market that does 3 times more. So the learning of what's new and how it's used to even teach it, we have to learn it.
Right.
And so then the applicability, because we might know that, like we talked about earlier about ChatGPT and Perplexity. Well, the capacity is only as good as the tool itself, how it's used and how transferable the tool can be, and in what environments the tool is used for. Am I going to do calculus, or if I'm stuck, am I going to put a calculus problem in Perplexity? Don't know. Is it going to give me the right answer? Maybe. And even though I say it that way, that's the reality, because how it's used, it may not be the tool for that. But again, I have to know that, and not having someone to guide me and instruct me as to what's the best tool to use is difficult when you don't have that knowledge. And then for students, I would say, there's a lot of stuff out there. Again, we talked about Gemini, ChatGPT, even Canva, and we talk a bit simplistically with Google Slides. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, but being able to have someone to guide you, to walk with you, to nurture you through how to use all the various tools that are available and all the various skills that are needed and required to manipulate those tools can be daunting. And not having the basics in how to even do navigating a computer, even though now I would think that most kids know how to navigate a computer, but even having the skills to using, some kids have never used a mouse. And, some of those strategies, might require that. I don't know, but those are skills, even just the basic operation of how to use a computer can be daunting for some people.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the gaps that I see, unless you as a practitioner see others.
I would say I don't know, as in the gaps for the education space, but I would see, as you said, for the kids learning just the operations of a computer. Like, I know that in the kindergartners have tablets versus a computer, a laptop, right? So I know that in the county, the kids from first grade to end of high school, they all have laptops, but the kindergartners have tablets. So I'm quite sure there's a reason why they have tablets. So, but when you start in first grade and you receive a laptop, you're like, what am I doing with this? I don't think that, the teacher's homeroom is gonna be like, the, hey, this is how you open the laptop. This is how you get to your thing. This is how you log in. This is your password. As a first grader, remembering your password, it's tough.
Daunting.
Right. It's tough. Like, you're 6, 7 years old and you're trying to remember a password that somebody gave you, and that's your password, right? Like, and it's not like, oh, Let me spell out a easy word for you to remember. Let's say the word, what's an easy word? Home.
Giraffe. Oh, home. Yeah, home.
Home, right? Like, or school or something easy. Well, I don't know if school is easy, but let's say home, that they would remember that that's their password, right? So that's something also that's not thought about. Is there a technology that can help with making it easier for kids, or is that something that it's the jump in the pool and swim and learn
Mm.
right away, right? So it's like which which route would be better for the kid? Make it easier from technology, or throwing them in the deep end and be like, learn how to swim and this is your password and there you go.
Because that would say there's a benefit to both.
Right.
But I would say for the younger ones, it's probably better to give it to them and then the older ones to figure it out. But at some point, they're all going to need guidance. Even if they don't know how to swim, at some point, they're going to have some type of guidance to swim, right? So either way, I look at it, it's best to teach the skill up front and then you just come back and reinforce later.
Hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that when we come down to teaching and education, especially when it comes to tech, in my experiences, you don't get those dedicated tech classes until they get to middle school. So you get the keyboarding, the intro to tech, the the graphics class, and then they teach the video class in some cases. I know my school had a full-blown video studio, and they did the announcements via the studio, and that was a class for them. Every student got rotated as a special through computer science, and they learned about the computers. They learned about the computer ethics that we were speaking of earlier. From elementary to middle school, that's a nice little gap.
Hmm.
So what do? You got to teach them. And then the question is, who's teaching them? And again, that goes back to that gap. It's like, I don't know, because I would assume that someone has showed them how to type in those letters. And then the question is, do they really, especially the itty bitty ones, do they really know their letters well enough to type them? So someone's typing them in for them. So it's a learning experience for some of those children to even recognize it. They might have letter recognition. So you put it on the back of their tablet with the password on the back of their tablet, and they're, pecking away. But I can't answer the question because I don't know.
Hmm.
And I think it's just hard to determine whether or not um, we're doing them a service, even at that age, having a personal tablet. I know in the county that I used to belong to, affiliate with, they have done away with the one-to-one computer systems. So that now that there's a cart with a set of 30 computers that can be used, from class to class. There's no more that one-on-one that we had during COVID. So that might alleviate the problem, but you still got to teach them how to turn it on. So I would assume now that there's the individual parts for the classrooms, there is some time taken for how to access and do all the processing.
Yeah.
I would hope. I would hope.
Yeah. So, what do you think? How important is developing a strong organizational skills and accountability early on, giving the self-directed learning required in a tech industry?
Well, here's my take on that. I find that organizational skills start early. That's something that starts at home. As much as we talk about, I laugh about this. I was one of those, I'm a highly organized person. I am a planner. My family will tell you I am a planner, down to time, day, how long it's going to take. My daughter didn't never develop that. But she understands that. But I think that with the organizational skills, it's something they learn early. We talk about in pre-K the cleanup song, clean up everybody, clean up everything has a place. That's organization, that you develop that skill as a part of your organization. And then in school, you have an organization because your day is organized into chunks, right? I think that at some point, if that organizational skill is not honed, not only at home, but also at school, where the child can actually literally see that it's an organization, it doesn't get learned. We used to do, we don't do it as much now that as we used to do years ago as teachers. But you used to have a notebook check. You had to have your notebook and a tab, right? You had your quizzes, your notes, your whatever, your handouts, so that your notebook for that class was organized. We don't do a lot of that anymore. And so some of those skills are lost. And, as you talk about, those skills are transferable. If they can't see the logic and the patterns that go along with organization, then they're all over the place. We've lost the art of doing outlines. Kids don't want to do outlines because it takes up too much time. I don't want to do an outline. Why do I got an outline? I'm sure you hear that at home too, right? But that's that's an organizational skill. And we have somehow lost those arts of things that used to be. And until we can bring them back and that we are actively and enforcing those skills, it's going to be difficult. But I think that once they learn those skills, those are easily transferable, as we talked about earlier about, your child doing Minecraft. Once they see that there is a connection and a pattern, the light bulb goes off.
Mhm.
But it's not until they're ready. And I think too that we forget that, even though as parents and as teachers and as educators, we want them to get it like today.
Right.
Sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for them to see the connection. And how long it's going to take, in my daughter's case, like 22 years. But it took a while for the light bulb to go off. But it comes, and we have to make sure that we understand that, every child is different. But as long as you still consistently, and that's the key too, being consistent. As long as you're consistent with the practice, put your folders, your notes in this section, put your handouts in this section, put your, pictures in this section, until we get to that idea of where things go and that logical matter and that organization makes it is a priority. It's going to take a while for it to really be applicable, just for them to practice the art of the transformation and the transference of the skill.
Yeah. And I think also it's what did they grasp that would make stick, right? So
Mhm.
let's say that the notebook organization for them it doesn't stick. But putting the crayons in the rainbow stacks together, right? So like let's say all your blue crayons together, all your yellow crayons together and all that stuff. If
Mhm.
that might be something that they stick with. Like they're like,
Mhm.
let's go with the color coordination organization that is something that I can stick with, or something like that. It's something.
It's also as simple as putting your clothes away. You're not going to put your socks with your jeans.
Right.
You're going to put all your underclothes garments, your t-shirts, your socks, your underpants together. In one drawer. You're going to put your jeans and your t-shirts, or your jeans and your sweatshirts in another drawer, or your sweatpants, so that they can see that, there's similar items go in similar things, so that they can see that those patterns, have a sense and a rhyme and a reason.
Yeah. And also, like, if you can also put it in the kitchen,
Yes.
in the pantry, right? Like in the pantry, you have the like item together, and you're like, hey, let's put the baking items together. Let's put the cooking items together, the oils together, the seasonings together. So that's something also. It's another pattern that you can.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, let's jump into the next question, which would be what changes in education programs would you recommend to school leaders to strengthen students' skills in tech?
Well, it's funny you should ask that question, because I've been toying with the high school redesign for about a couple of years now, and almost getting ready to write an article, a concept article. I truly believe that we need to think about stackable classes and also arts integration built into those classes. For example, I'm developing a high school concept that looks at putting classes together so that the kids earn more Carnegie units for one class and can graduate much faster. So, for example, I have a class that I've built out that has American history, U.S. history, and art appreciation is one class. The class would be 2.5 credits, so that in the same time they're learning American Lit. They're also learning U.S. history, so the literature and the history mirror, and then the art that goes with it. So they would take that. I'm trying to, it would fit in a 4x4 block model, or it would fit in a AB day that the kids use now. So instead of having 4 40-day quarters like we have in our state right now, or in our county right now, you'd have 3 50-day quarters and then 1 40-day quarter. That fourth quarter would be for CTE, so that you would do the art integration, you do the technical skills, you do the apprenticeships, you do the dual enrollment in May. When the colleges go, you go with them in May, and you finish out that last couple of days in that dual enrollment, so that gives them time for career exploration, for developing those tech skills that they need to work on, to be a part of, or introduce those tech skills. Also, internships, exactly. Internships, apprenticeships, shadowing, whatever they need to be ready for the workforce. So that is what I'm kind of toying with right now, because I really see, very much like what we've been talking about, is that kids aren't ready because they're not exposed.
Mhm.
And if we had dedicated time, if we made the content, like I said, if you took that one class that you've got the American Lit, the U.S. history, and the art together, they then see how it all fits together.
Mhm.
It's just not a nebulous course. They see the connection. They see why the author wrote what they wrote, and they see why the painting is written like this and how it represents and it's applicable to history. They get to see the connections clearly. And
It's like
then when you
3D, it's like a 3D view of America is what
exactly,
it would look like.
exactly. And then you'd spend that time, for example, let's say, Miss Green, you're interested in, cybersecurity. We worked at where you can spend 2 weeks with a guy over at Booz Allen doing ABC. So then you spend that time, or there's a group of you who may have that same industry. We make that connection with that partnership with that school or with that entity, and you all go. You might be in cybersecurity, somebody might be in systems, somebody might be in networking, but you're all there doing your 2 weeks, getting your exposure, you're learning. Then there's a project that you would do for that week, very much like a capstone of for that 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 40 days semester, so that you show exactly what you learned.
Mhm.
And so it would be so beneficial, so that they leave with some type of real world experience about something that interests them, and they know what they can then need to do to move forward to be able to be successful in that particular industry.
That sounds really cool because
Thanks.
I would have really loved that as a high schooler where, at the end of the year, I would have some experience in whatever I decided at that point, and to see even if I was really interested in that, right? So like
There you go.
instead of having after high school and college, like let me go to explore this degree and see if it works out or not. Because I
Hmm.
spent probably a year in college where I'm like, I'm not really interested in this topic, right? So I was accounting. Like, yeah, I'm not really interested. I wasted a whole 2 semesters on this and mm, nope, right? So but it would have saved me a lot of time and heartache.
Yep, I'm one of those students too. I loved econ. It's funny. I can quote you econ theory, but I can't do the math. I love econ, but I can't do the math. So I figured, I don't think I need to do this. I'm right there with you.
I don't think for me it was the math part. I think it was more so boredom that got
Mm, well,
right.
yeah.
Boredom. I was not as interested as I thought I would be because once I got out of there, and also I was young. So when high school was done, so went to school in Canada. So in Canada, I finished high school at the age of 15, right? Because they don't have 12th grade there, so they have 11th grade. And you finish at 11th grade, and then afterwards, I turned 16 in the summer, went straight to college. And yeah, 16-year-old trying to figure out what you want to do is not it, not not the answer.
Yeah.
So I would say that I think I would have had a better time knowing before finishing high school where I really wanted to go, right? So having the ability to explore the different career paths that I could have.
And I think that's where we talk, getting back to, the conversation we had about parents. I mean, I think once parents see that their child is interested in things, I mean, I don't care if they are interested today in play and tomorrow they're interested in, motorcycle jumping. I think the key is as long as you nurture and cultivate your child's interest,
Mhm,
then your child gets to see there are possibilities in the world to which he or she fits into, and being able to have those experiences, then they learn what they like and what they don't like, and then that opens up the world to whole other things. My experience is that I was a Girl Scout, and my Girl Scout troop used to my council used to have a weekly show on the cable station in our community, and that's how I became a journalist. I left, I thought I was going to go into econ, but then I realized I love that world, and so that's how I became I'm a trained journalist, and so I loved it, and my world opened. But I think that I would not have had that experience had I would not have made that career choice had I not have been exposed. And I think that's the key, as we talk about these things about the weaknesses and getting kids ready for cyber. I think just like you talked about having your child go to Minecraft camp,
mhm,
being able to celebrate and expose your children at an early age, no matter what it may be, art, music, drama, dance, coding camp, building, robotics, whatever. If you see that propensity in your child early, tapping into those interests only can lead them into something better. That
mhm.
exposure opens up the world to them that they probably would not have had otherwise. And I think for what I've noticed over the last couple of years, some parents have gotten too engrossed in the athletic piece to realize that, there is the IT and the athletics. Just take it, instead of being on the football field, being behind the scenes.
Mhm.
Someone's got to create that safety equipment. Someone's got to create AstroTurf, right? What are you going to do to be on the other side of that sport? Because I think it's important that we develop our children, but make sure that we hone and grow and nurture our children into to explore things that expand their minds and their thought into something that they could do to be productive citizens.
Yeah, and I think also the push in the athletic side is more on the compensation.
Mm,
I think that that's something that why the drive towards that is compensation. Like, I don't know, don't quote me on it, but that's an observation that
mhm.
ever since they've put out $1 million deals out there, that the push of athletics has gone up, right?
Yes.
So that's that's my opinion. That's my observation. I'm not saying facts or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But that's
But
something that
it's true. But it's true. I mean, I think, we forget that, just like I told you about my student, and we'll talk about him probably another session. But I had a student who went to one of the local high schools that had the CCNA program. And there are 4 courses for the CCNA, which were offered at this high school. My student passed the test, passed the exams, earned his CCNA, and left high school with a $70,000 job.
good for him. Good
And
for
so he was already ready to go. And so just taking advantage of the opportunities that are there are
him.
something that parents don't, or people don't take advantage of. I mean, because there's nothing to sneeze at walking around with a CCNA.
Mhm,
And especially leaving high school with a CCNA, you could write your own ticket practically today
mhm.
and be marketable and have a good, decent paying job. And not have to worry about sitting in an ice bath, the next day. So,
Exactly.
So,
being injured or worry about concussions and,
all of those
torn
things.
ACLs and, being injured all the time. I don't have to worry about that.
Exactly, exactly. But, I believe that with the way things are going now and the way the world is now moved so rapidly, exponentially, quickly to AI, the evolution of tech, the need for cybersecurity, whatever parents can do to expose their children to those three arenas alone in whatever small way is going to be beneficial to them in the long run.
Mhm.
AI is not going anywhere. We are in deep in the tech world, and there's going to be a need for cybersecurity. That is not going to go away. And those three areas are going to be the hot ticket commodity that's going to keep our world afloat. And so, whatever parents can do to nurture, cultivate, or even expose their children to those three industries is going to be critical. They may not move in that way, but at least expose them
Mhm.
because it's something that we're all going to need to know. I wish, years ago I had a thought about, doing whatever to get myself in a position to be more tech savvy because I'm finding that as an adult, I need to be more aware. And I think for our young people now who are coming up in today's world, it's not a matter of when it's going to happen or if it is going to happen. It's happening, and you've got to be ready for it. Whether or not, as parents, we really want them to be ready, they've got to be ready.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would say that cybersecurity, AI, and technology is not scary. I know that a lot of people think that it's scary, but it's not. It's not scary. It's not what, in general, is not what the media makes it to be, right? It's not like everybody's hacking and wearing they're wearing hoodies and they're like, typing in the basement in the dark and typing away with green fonts on the screen. No, that's not it, right? I'm a cybersecurity professional. I'm a regular girl, So if we don't look what the media makes us to look like at all.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So in now to wrap up, in what ways do you see community and businesses partnerships impacting student learning in tech or AI or cybersecurity?
Well, I think, as we said earlier, there are a lot of companies out here working with both students and parents. I think a few of them I've already mentioned that are out there who are reputable. Your community colleges are doing a great job at providing services not only for kids, but for parents and adults. You'd be surprised. Four-year institutions are doing the same thing. They have adult halal for those of us who are older people to learn new skills. So I think that, even partnerships with healthcare, now you can't even get your insurance off your computer nowadays if you don't know how to use a computer.
Yeah.
And AARP has computer systems and courses for seniors. So as long as you're engaged and as long as you're willing to learn, I think that is going to be the key
Mhm.
to being successful and being actively engaged. So knowing where, your computer, your libraries have workforce development skills, being willing to know what you don't know, admit that you don't know what you don't know, and just be able to take that leap of faith. There's nothing wrong with trying to get, internships in areas for students, to do some internships or some exploration courses or shadow days to make yourself aware of what's going on in the industry. If you think that you're interested, call somebody up and say, hey, can I shadow you for a day? And learn, because I think that's going to be the key to changing some of these mindsets that you talk about as to what it means to be in IT, AI, or cybersecurity, so that they can really see what the day in the life of a person is, what the skills are, and how to manipulate their thinking into being able to say, hey, I can do this.
Mhm.
And that will definitely change the perception of what it means to be in the field.
Yeah. And also, I would suggest, if possible, conferences. A
Yes.
lot of conferences have free passes for students.
Yes.
If you have a student email, you can go to conferences if you have the time or the ability to go.
Exactly. Exactly. And believe it or not, even with the paying ones, if you are telling them, some of them don't, if you're a scholar or a student, some of them will give you a scholarship and you go for, as you say, go for free, or they'll reduce the rate for you to go if you reach out to them. I've had it happen several times when I was in grad school. So there are ways to get there and learn from the experts who in the field.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. Well, I thank you
Yes.
so much, Joan, for coming on
Thank
and
you.
joining me on this very, very interesting and insightful conversation.
Thank
And
you.
I will see you next time.
Look forward to it. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.